Thank you, Lawrence, and thank you all the Lightpath folks for making this wonderful thing happen. It's just, I love what Lightpath is about, and it's always fabulous to be able to be part of it. And I'm really looking forward to sharing what I'm talking about today. This is something that I haven't put together for other places, so this is special for Lightpath. The title of today's program is Thriving in These Times, because our cultural perceptions are that everything's falling apart, but if we can get beyond them, I'm sure we can more than survive. So what I'd like to do now is explore with you what I think is happening. And what I think is happening is a whole new awareness among all of humanity. Paul Ray's The Cultural Creatives have reached 80 million people in the US, almost 40% as of 2008. I'm sure we're much more than that now, which means there is a body of group who have a set of values that build on the best of the past and are attempting to create something that can be more helpful for all of humanity, harmonious for all of humanity. So Fred Alan Wolfe put together this illustration back in the 70s in his book Space, Time, and Beyond with Bob Tobin. When thought and experience become one, consciousness is changed. So I want to talk about what that looks like. This time that we're in has been forecast and prophesied for millennia. It's the end of a 6,000-year period almost, and it's a time when humanity shifted one state of consciousness to another state of consciousness, and I've written a whole book explaining that. It just came out. I call it Discovering a New Way. But the Hopi story that they have passed on from generation to generation of their elders is laid out here. It's carved into that rock and then put on the, when people do a sketch of the rock, what you can see is next to it. And the idea is that humanity gets off the harmonious path, okay, and gets up there on that high level, lots of material goods, lots of excitement, lots of conflict. And then because it uses up the resources we all do, and because we get into so much conflict, then we come tumbling off that path back to the always existing path that was focused on the planet. That's what the little circle is. And we can live harmoniously with the planet. That was the Hopi version. This is the Anishinaabe version, which includes most of the folks up in the northeastern part of North America. And it says we'll come to a fork in the road, and one leads to materialism and destruction, and the other leads to the spiritual way where the native people are standing. And the outcome is a period of eternal peace, harmony, and a new earth where the destruction of the past is healed. And we are now about halfway through this process. It started in the mid-'80s. Another Native American who put together prophecies from all over the Americas said that for some reason what we were in was in our lower natures in animal thought. And again, my book, Discovering a New Way, will explore that in more detail. I don't want to take the time now. But he says we're going into a human world where the mind is open to the radiance of our own soul, and the cycle of human beings is coming back. The cycle comes back where we get to move more and more and more closer to our core self with every experience. And that's what we're going. And something so good is going to happen on the earth that it cannot even be described. So these are what some of the Native Americans have said. Then if we get into Western tradition, this is the Jesuit priest who was an archaeologist and paleontologist who saw the very long view of the development of the planet as the development of consciousness as well as life. So he says that a future for us can only be imagined in terms of a harmonious conciliation. Isn't that beautiful? He called the consciousness of humanity, what Carl Jung calls the collective consciousness, he called it the Noosphere. And it included not only human consciousness, but the consciousness of all beings on the planet. He says our Noosphere is destined to close in upon itself in a change of state, abandon the material, the organoplanetary foothold, to shift to its transcendent center. And this is what the natives were calling, the Native Americans were calling our spiritual core, right? So we're getting a new basis for our awareness through this process. It's the end of the world as we have known it, but it's the fulfillment of the spirit of the earth. So what is this world? This world is this 6,000 plus or minus year period that has been called all kinds of names. There's a few on the screen. And it's a period of materialism, of empire, of all kinds of things that we don't like, but also incredible progress. Oh my goodness, I couldn't be sitting here doing this with you today if we hadn't had this last 6,000 years. And it ends with, as it says at the bottom of the screen, the lifting of the veil. We've had a temporary veil put down on us by this culture we've been living in. And we're rending the veil, we're lifting the veil, just like a bride. That's where the word comes from in the Greek tradition. And the emerging age, the age that the natives were talking about, that Pierre Teilhard de Chardin was talking about, is a whole new kind of way of being. You know, we've heard of the age of Aquarius, but there's all kinds of other names, as I have on the screen, for this new world that we're entering into. And in the book of Revelation, it's a new heaven in a new earth. So the Mayans have described this next world in various terms, but here's kind of a summary. They said that the elders of the past returned to make a communication between the heart of humanity and the heart of the earth. And it will be an era of peace, of harmony, of love and union. And the technology that we use will be based on spirit. Those of you who have been doing energy healings or who have discovered that you can intuit something that you couldn't figure out using the material methods, all of you who have been doing that work are the beginning of this new world, this new way of being that the Mayans and the Native Americans and other folks have been describing, as I say, for a very long time. And the essential values of this culture, some of you may recognize these, are very clear. They start with that interconnected web of life. We are part of an interconnected whole, and there's a value, and you can see it in what's going on in the streets today. I'm talking now as the whole George Floyd thing has been being, you know, erupted around the world, right? Just erupted. And it's because we recognize, our values recognize the inherent worth and dignity of every human being, right? We also recognize we need to accept one another. So the Supreme Court, bless their hearts, made it so that you couldn't fire someone just because they didn't think sexually the way you thought things ought to be. I think that's just gorgeous, right? We're also recognizing that there needs to be more compassion in our justice and more equity in our justice. We're seeing this all around us. This global community, oh my goodness, with the internet, you know, what's happening in India is like what's happening in the next neighborhood over. We have this experience now of what is going on anywhere in the world affects me. This is totally new. All of these are values that did not exist in this culture, in this 6,000 year period, in this world, until the beginning of, no, the 60s. I'll go that far, the mid 60s, in fact. And you know, when we started realizing we were having an impact on all these other life forms that we didn't like, and we started to realize the whole civil rights world, and we started to acknowledge that there is something more to life than your nice little home and your family, which is good, but not sufficient, right? So the Mayans said that these changes are going to happen. We can't stop the changes. They're part of what is happening. As you know, Chardin said, it was the destined implosion of the Noosphere, right? The difference, it says in that second bullet, but our attitude and actions determine how harsh or mild they are. We need to act to make changes, elect people to represent us who understand and take political action and respect the earth. And because we haven't been doing that, it gets harder. And that's it, our attitude and our actions. If we act in harmony and in alignment, then it goes mild. If we act in contrast to that, if we act out of not caring or you know, allowing someone else to do it or any of those other things, then, well, you know, we get what we get, and it's going to be harder. So that his last line is very important, to be clear about who you are and your relation to the earth. And I'd like to point out that our relation to the earth in the realm of matter is, you know, everything. This body is the earth. Everything in my space is the earth in different forms. So I've explored this for a while, and I have this little chart that I use and I share with my students. When we are talking about the material world, we do material actions. If I want to prepare a meal, if I want to fix a house, if I want to make a computer, it's all at the level of material. However, there are things that are going on in this world that do not happen through material action, and those are what we call the metaphysical. And in that world, our change happens through our thought and feeling. The quantum physics describes how that works. Many of you know that, and we can talk about that in more detail later. I want to go beyond the metaphysical, though, and I want to say, even though much of our experience has to do with thought and feeling, there is another realm beyond that, and that's the realm that Chardin and the Mayans and the other Native Americans have been talking about all this time, and that's the realm of the mystical. So what's happening to us right now is we've been looking at the world through the level of matter, and at the level of matter, we've been doing all these things. We've been, you know, isolating ourselves and wearing masks and all of that. But we can also do some other things that matter at the level of matter. If you don't know about these things, I make it a point every day to spend some time just looking at the sun and appreciating it. Because this virus thing, and because my life likes the sun, my body likes having some sun. It says when we drink hot water as tea, it's likely to destroy the virus. Now, virus isn't alive, so you're not killing it, but you're destroying the little shell that it is. And most detergents, most soaps, most hot water, most of those kinds of things simply destroy the shell of the virus so it can't do what it does. You do not need to use antibacterial soap. That just increases the likelihood of resistant bacteria. So you don't need to do that. Just regular soap, regular hot water, you're fine. At the level of the material, also vitamin C. I take a lot of vitamin C for when I am functioning at this level. And that's the thing to realize. We are always functioning at all of these levels. Now, what happens is, and you know, what woke science up to the possibility of something more than material solutions was the realization that every cell reacts to our thinking. So our negativity, when we are upset and fearful and angry and concerned and worried and all those things that are not good, not feeling good feelings, okay? All of those things tend to reduce the capacity of the cell to fight off infection, reduce the capacity of the cell to heal, reduce the interactions of the cells so that we begin to show signs of illness, or what we call dis-ease. Whereas if we can shift our attitudes, and lots of studies are showing this, we start to have a different kind of reaction in the body. And here's one of the fun studies that I love. If you are experiencing tears, where the tears are coming from, the emotional state that encouraged the tears determines the chemical structure of the tears. Isn't this marvelous? It's fascinating. And that's what's going on everywhere in the body. It determines the chemical structure of the fluids in the body, whether they're accessible to the cells or not. So we're getting a shift out of the material into the metaphysical. And the basic assumption was laid out by Edgar Cayce. Reality is built out of thought. Our experience begins at our thought. Every thought begins to create our reality. So the way I'm depicting this is the world out there is just waves until we bring our perceptions to it. And then that dot of light there, that's our reality. And what's happening in the world today is more and more people are realizing that until we have a thought, what's out there is unformed potential. Our thought brings it into form. That's the essence of the quantum reality, and that's the essence of the metaphysical reality. So one of the things that's begun to happen in the world of the sciences, and we're starting to develop new sciences like the new science of happiness. If you're trying to shift from concern and worry and anger and upset, there's some ideas that have been proven in studies to be effective. Anytime we can be grateful about anything. Oh, this is such a good meal. Oh, I get to talk with you. Isn't that marvelous? Oh, I get to see you. Okay? Anything like that. Oh, I can turn on the light. I don't have to be in the dark. Anytime we can be grateful for these simple things in our world, we are actually improving our happiness. And what happens is that the whole biological system begins to align itself on this way of thinking. Be optimistic. If you're aware of the long term of what we're going through, this is actually a pretty good thing. This is the breaking down of a world that is no longer working. We're beginning to destroy the planet. We're at a place where we could destroy the planet with the touch of a button, which is scary. All those things, if we want to focus on that, we can. But if we allow ourselves to say, oh, that's coming to an end and something new is emerging and I want to be part of that something new. And everybody says, all the old traditions tell us that this something new is fabulous. I wonder what it's going to be. I want to be part of it. If we can start thinking and talking in those terms, then guess what? We get increased feelings of well-being, the cells get lined up, and it's all beautiful. Amazing things happen. Counting our blessings, people who write down 3 good things that happen once a week, if you only do it once a week. This is part of why certain church services are designed this way, where we get to celebrate the good things that happened this week, all right? Using your strengths. This is one of the things that apparently is one of my strengths, putting ideas together and sharing them with you. If I'm doing something that's in my realm of my weaknesses, inventory management, for example, my energy level goes down, my body starts to complain, okay? I need to keep working in my strengths as much as possible, and so do you. It heightens your happiness, it heightens your whole body's well-being. And here's the final thing. Every opportunity you get, do something kind for some other being. It can be a plant, okay? If you see a plant being choked by a weed, move the weed. If it's an animal, if you see an animal struggling, even a spider, if you put the spider outside, that's an act of kindness, okay? But with people, paying for someone else in line, letting someone go in front of us in line, not being upset because someone is coming down the road, barreling down the road much too fast. They obviously think it's very important that they get wherever they're going. Just be kind. Don't have to be upset. Whenever we do that, we actually improve our happiness, which improves the health of the body. This is a whole new science that has been emerging, and it's part of the shift from a material culture to one that is based more on metaphysics. Now, we are about, as I said, about halfway through this shift. And one of the things that's happening is we're getting pointed to the next level beyond the metaphysical. So if we get the material level, it's been going along. The metaphysical takes us up to a new level of functioning where we have our prosperity, we have our health, we have our well-being, we have our happy relationships. Then the mystical takes us to the next level. And that next level is the realm of the spiritual teachers of the world. Emma Curtis Hopkins wrote a book called High Mysticism back during the last flu, actually. It came out during the Spanish flu. And high mysticism was the ultimate statement of everything she had learned in 30 years of teaching and practicing metaphysics. She went from metaphysics to mystic. And what she says is wherever our inner vision is focused, our mind and our conditions will follow. So if I'm focusing on what's emerging and what's powerful and the connections we are making and the people that are coming forward and the ideas that are coming forward, then that's where my mind and my conditions must follow. If I'm focusing on something even higher than that, then the next paragraph we can be filled with peace, okay? Whenever we focus on the qualities that they're focusing on. So we focus on the everlasting peace and we can be filled with peace. This is part of the yoga aphorisms of Patanjali, written 1600 BC. It's not new, but it's something that we don't weave into what has been our materialist culture. And now that we've been working in the metaphysical, we can begin to explore the mystical. And then it says, as we release the ideas that we are separate from our good, whatever we call our good, whether it's our prosperity, whether it's having good relationships, whether it's having peace on the planet, okay, the more we release the possibility, the idea that I am separated from peace, as I go back to that original drawing where it goes, I'm aware of peace, become that. That becomes my experience. And that is what she defines as forgiveness. I release one idea and I'm given for that idea something else. Wow. And so ultimately we turn our vision, we focus on the one that is the source of all, the interconnected supporting source, there we go, of all that is, and all the love and the good that that source is becomes us and our lives. And that's where the mystical path leads. Another way to think about it is the Course in Miracles. It is moving us from the material through the metaphysical to the mystical. And at that point of at one-ment, okay? In the mystical, when we're in that place of at one-ment, everything else follows. Seek the kingdom and all else follows in the Christian tradition, right? Because when we're moving toward at one-ment, when we stop holding barriers, the miracle in Course in Miracles is when I can be thinking about someone I had issues with, and now I can only feel the love between us. That's a miracle. And what happens is both of us are healthier as a result, physically and financially and in relationships. Everything is improved. That's the miracle that the Course in Miracles teaches. And it moves us ever closer because now all I'm experiencing is love. I'm not experiencing separation, right? I'm moving toward the at one-ment. And it says that time is a tool. Time is related to the material culture. There was no description of time prior to this 6,000-year period we're in. We call this period history because it's the only period in humanity's existence that has been described in terms of time. Isn't that interesting? And it has been written as a progression from one point to another. Time is a tool, the Course teaches us. It exists as a means to help us get to the experience of at one-ment in which all is good. And time will no longer exist when it's no longer needed. This new heaven, this new earth that we're moving toward does not include the measurement of time. And some of you have already begun to experience this. It's actually talked about in the Mayan prophecies that as we go through this process, we get to a point where it's day of the week, time of day, an hour, 5 minutes, who knows? You know, it's just the experience. The idea of time, the measurement of time is part of the empire bureaucratic structure. Clocks came into normal use when monasteries insisted that the monks stop what they were doing at this point in the day and do something else at another point in the day. Okay, that's where the clocks began to be visible in Western culture, in this empire culture that we are moving out of. When we no longer need it, it will no longer exist. We will be, as many of you are describing and experiencing, in the right place at the right time without even having to think about it, because we'll be following that inner awareness that is part of the metaphysical shift and moves us into the mystical shift in consciousness. So what this shift really means is the unlocking of the chains that have bound us into specific roles, into specific ways of living, into a bureaucratic empire structure. I know we're a democracy, but we function like, we're a democratic republic in the US, but really we have bases in 40 different countries. We've been out in the world trying to make everybody else in the world be like us. And we're part of something, as I say, this 6,000-year period. We're coming to the end of it. The ideals of what we have been choosing, the ideals of our founding fathers, can be carried forward. The best of the past gets carried forward into something that is so beautiful we can't even imagine it. The virus has been a call to stop, to break these chains. The virus said, you don't have to go to work. And see, you're still okay. The virus said, you don't have to be in constant communication and connection with everybody in your world. And you're still okay. Because really, the most important thing in your world is your connection with the all that is and where you are placing your vision and what your thoughts and feelings are. So here, take this time. We've had weeks. Can you imagine it? Weeks to sort this out and make connections internally that then become external. A natural sorting or resettling process can occur, and that's exactly what has happened. The people who were tied so tightly to that old way got broken free. They get to settle. They get to discover. Are they going to go back to that old way, or are they going to find this other new way? Based on what I'm seeing on the internet, a lot of people are finding this other new way. We're getting this settling, sorting and resettling, okay? So that we can diverge into new realities that best fit our spiritual needs. If you think about how planet Earth is, it's a place where all of us can live in connection, but totally different ways. I remember there's a wonderful line in a book called Illusions by Richard Bach. And it's the tales of a reluctant Messiah. And the Messiah character asks Richard, what world he lives in. And Richard says, I live in the same world everyone else is. And the Messiah character says, really? You live, and Richard was flying airplanes in the rural parts of the US. You live in the same world as a stockbroker in New York City and as a beggar in Calcutta? In a way we do, because everything we do affects everybody. But in terms of our personal experience, you got to be kidding me, right? The multimillionaire on Wall Street compared to the beggar who's sorting through the dumps in Calcutta, compared to a guy who's flying people around in his plane in the rural America. Whole different worlds, whole different realms of experience, and each one totally appropriate to where that person is on their spiritual path, on their path to the at-one-ment, on their path to becoming who they truly are in this world. And that's where we are today. And what we're going to begin to realize is we are not these bodies, we are that. That image is probably the most accurate portrayal of what a human being is that I have ever seen anywhere. And this is who we are. And as we make the shift from this realm of materialism through this period, and so we're about halfway through it, as I said. So if we're going to see another 25 plus or minus years of shifts and changes. But the more we focus on these other realities, not the material, but the metaphysical and the mystical, the more we are likely to experience the absolute truth. And in the realm of the absolute, there is no change. It's always perfect, always. I'm going to come back on full screen. Bingo. Hi. Thank you. It's a treat to be able to share these ideas with people. I hope you find some value in them. And I truly hope that you will see when you're dealing with stuff, go ahead and deal with stuff. But when you're thinking about your life and you're thinking about the world, realize that this life and this world has many, many more dimensions. Be aware of where your thoughts and feelings are taking you. And be aware that the material will change as your thoughts and feelings change. And then as you begin to shift your focus out of the stuff of every day and the experience of every day to a longer, more abstract view of our reality and start focusing on the qualities you want to see more of, all the traditions and a lot of experience along the thousands of years have demonstrated that when we focus on those qualities, we experience more of them. We experience, our whole world aligns ourselves on those qualities. So I'm wishing the best for you as we go through this shift. Know that what you are seeing as disaster is simply the falling apart of what no longer works, so that what's emerging right now, the new seedling, if you will, can emerge and blossom, and you are part of it.